Hello, welcome. I'm glad you guys are all here today to discuss Sophie Scholl and the White Rose, the writing prompt in particular. And I wanted to share a moment about why I chose this book, because it actually is a very important book in terms of resistance and intellectual resistance and resistance when you don't have to resist. And I thought it was really important how they came to join the organization, the discussion of tactics of what they would do about Nazi Germany. And it was like they were insiders and to Nazi Germany, but outsiders at the same time. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that, okay? And this particular book and writing project actually is going to connect us to our next writing project. We're going to step out of the Holocaust for a couple of weeks, and you are going to create your own project that is going to be not a writing project, but a video about how to resist and how to spot fallacy and why that's important. And you're going to get to choose a topic that you find interesting that is current. So it all connects together. So first of all, hello, how are you all doing?
Good.
It's good to see all of you here. I am going to go to, well, I'm on the project number 2 roadmap, and I want you to feel comfortable as I'm discussing these things to stop me and say, hey, I don't understand something, or can you help me with something, and I will do my best. All right? So first things first is that I am going to read this little part right here. It says, in this 3-week unit, we will be building upon the concepts we learned in Ethical Argument by Kertler by examining a German resistance group during World War II. In 1942 and 43, German citizens Sophie Scholl, Hans Scholl, Alexander Schmorell, Kurt Huber, Christoph Probst, and Willy Graf, among others, formed a resistance group, the White Rose, in order to intellectually resist the Nazi regime. Knowingly putting their lives on the line, they worked together to try and overthrow the fascist dictatorship who put a tight rein on the German citizenry. Okay? And so a quotation by somebody who actually studied the movement, George Wittgenstein, in 1979, he states, the government, or rather the party, controlled everything. The news media, arms, police, the armed forces, the judiciary system, communications, travel, all levels of education from kindergarten to universities, all cultural and religious institutions. Political indoctrination started at a very early age and continued by means of the Hitler Youth with the ultimate goal of complete mind control. Children were exhorted in school to denounce even their own parents for derogatory remarks about Hitler or Nazi ideology. Okay, so your goal for this particular project is to learn how to identify fallacies, okay? And I encourage you to go to the fallacies Quizlet to remind yourself the names of the fallacies. I don't expect you to memorize those, but I do expect you to see, wait, there's this line of reasoning and I don't understand why it's this way. And so I am going to look at these fallacies and come up with an idea as to why it is a fallacy. Okay? So again, the goal is to learn how to identify fallacies and to think about tactics for intellectual resistance. All of you are college students. You all have access to social media. And so there's a lot of opportunities for intellectual resistance every day on the front lines where you are actually affecting current society, okay? So you're going to investigate what the reasons why certain individuals found themselves drawn to protest and what obstacles stood in their way and how they communicated. As always, I invite you to dig deeply into the scholarly reading and writing process regardless of where you are. You can always go deeper, and please challenge yourself. So you're going to look at Sophie Scholl and the White Rose and then forms of Jewish resistance. And so your key question for the entire paper is, how effective or ineffective was the White Rose resistance group in fighting Nazi assumptions and fallacies? Now, we know already that the White Rose was squashed, right? I mean, they all were sentenced to death for their participation in the movement. So it really was a life and death decision. However, in the meantime, they created leaflets, right? And they were trying to get the word out. And had they not been caught that one particular day, they could have continued to work on that. So your job is to look and see what one or more or two or more of the group members, their ideas for fighting Nazi assumptions and fallacies, whether that was effective. Did they make any change? Did they influence people? What they wrote influential potentially? Okay. So the prompt. So you're going to identify assumptions and fallacies that the White Rose members had to contend with, which is Nazi propaganda. And if you go to the work page, the Google work page called Nazi Propaganda and Resistance, and this is just for one class, so if your name's not on here, don't worry. I have the other ones right here. So your job is going to be looking at Nazi propaganda and resistance, and you have opportunities to look at links about propaganda. There's several here. You can also do your own research about Nazi propaganda. You don't just have to use this particular activity. Okay? And so you're going to identify the assumptions and fallacies that were given by the Nazis, right? The propaganda. You're going to argue how effective or ineffective the group was in fighting these assumptions. Okay? And then that's it. So it's identifying, and you are arguing how effective or ineffective, okay? And you need to use Sophie Scholl and the White Rose. You may use forms of Jewish resistance. You could use Kurtler again if you'd like to, but it's not required. And then you need to find additional sources. Again, you can use any of these sources on this particular page if you would like, or you can research your own propaganda. Okay? And so I want to again focus in on the problem and why this would be an important paper to write, is that in every society, there are groups of people who wish to have the power to make decisions about laws and human rights. And these decisions can have a lasting negative impact and take away human rights, right? And so this is not just a problem found in history, it's ongoing, and it's our responsibility to play our part in society to ensure equity. And so the audience your job is to speak to those who wish to make social and political change in their own communities. This is meant to help them think about how to consider their tactics as well as how to identify false assumptions and fallacies by learning from history. So your paper is going to say, look, this is what the White Rose did. They did this because of this. These are the fallacies they had to contend with. They did a good job with this, but they didn't do a good job with that. Or they did a strong job with this. Or they really didn't do a good job with this. You know, your choice, right? So that you are actually looking at the lessons that they can teach us about resistance, because they were college students, just like you, right? They didn't have jobs. One was a professor, but the students, they didn't have jobs. Their jobs were students, and yet they still decided to try and make an impact. And this particular paper is going to, again, help you. It's kind of the base that's going to help you go out and research your own topic for the next project that you're going to create. So I would like to ask, do you have any questions about the prompt? Okay, it is a two-part prompt, so make sure that you keep that in mind, okay? Let me ask you a question. Which person from the White Rose did you think was the best in terms of resistance, had some of the best ideas? Who did you admire? I'll leave space.
I mean, probably the most obvious one would be Hans.
Okay, why is the most obvious one Hans, Lala?
Because he was, I feel like, mostly in charge of the writing that would go into the leaflets that they would send out. And because it was him and I forgot who, I think it was Alex, that would like each write up their own draft and then go over it together to pick whose would be sent out. And it was usually Hans whose words were like picked to be sent out. And because of like because it talked about like the research he would do and how he would like quote other people, so I feel like that probably strengthened their arguments more. And since it was mostly his ideas, he was probably like the core of the resistance.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate, so he actually used ethos, right? He actually utilized the authority of others to help support his evidence, and then he tried to do it in a logical way. Did you appreciate the fact that they actually got together to, you know, people wrote drafts and that they got together to discuss whose draft would be used and that sort of thing? Do you think that that's part of what makes a democratic group of resistance?
Yeah, because otherwise it would be more controlling. And the reason why they have more people in the group is because they want like everyone's opinions voiced. So it's better to have like other people give their opinions so that they're confident in what they're sending out rather than just trusting one person.
Right. It was, instead of just a single act of resistance, it was a collaborative act. And what I find fascinating is that they all joined the White Rose for a different reason, right? They came to it with different backgrounds. You know, Hans and Sophie Scholl, their parents actually did not like Hitler at all, but they allowed their kids to be part of the Hitler Youth which that was a big deal. And so they were part of the Hitler Youth and then quit and then ended up coming to this particular group to try to utilize something for change, right? I mean, it was, you were between a rock and a hard place. What did you guys think about the idea of leaving leaflets? Is it hard for you to picture why somebody would do something like that in this day and age? Or what do you think about the value of using the leaflets?
I think that might have been the best way to still remain anonymous at the time, at least, because there wasn't much technology to like do otherwise. And instead of like how Nazi propaganda was more like broadcast over speakers or stuff like that, through the leaflets they were able to remain anonymous, which is obviously one of the key components of their group, is so that they don't get caught. So
Right.
since they were so strong with their writing, it was like the best way to go.
Right. And one leaflet, it wasn't like one leaflet for one person. Somebody could pick up a leaflet, read it, hide it, and share it with somebody else or leave it somewhere else, right? So it could spread out. I know, you know, today with social media or technology, we don't understand how back, you know, even when I was a child, there, you know, people got news through the newspapers and radio, but they didn't have access to the radio, right? So really it was either word of mouth or it was through writing. And again, if it's through word of mouth, then you don't have that anonymity. So I I I think that this text is an important one because it gives you a backdrop, a look into how an organization would get together. And you know, it's interesting because in any political organization, if they're going to be successful, or any organization trying to enact change, there needs to be a think tank. There needs to be a group of people who get together. There needs to be a group of people who are considering what to say, how to say it. And in fact, I want to show you a very short video that I showed a different class. I need to search for it, just about the simplicity of subtext in something that you write. It's a short little video. I just thought about it right now. That is kind of what what you need to consider when you're looking at writing. I can find it here. Subtext. Let's see. If I can't find it this way, I'll find it a different way. Okay, I can't find it this way. It'll just take me 1 minute here. So a different class, doing something else. Let's see. Oh, sorry, it'll just take me a minute. I want you to see this because I think you'd find this to be actually what it is. Do this. All my papers are online. So everything I do is online. I have lots of books and things, but all of my work that I do is online. A different world. Hans and Sophie would be shocked. Wait for it. Let's see if we got to the end. I'm getting there. Still not there. Don't fall asleep on me. Come on. Did anyone find somebody while I'm looking for this? I can do this with it. Is anyone, did anyone find anything, anyone annoying in the group?
What does that mean, annoying?
Any one of the people in the book, not the book itself, but any one of the characters.
Oh, in a book, I'm like in the group, okay.
In the, no, not your group. I mean, anybody in the Sophie Scholl and the White Rose, like any one of the characters, did they annoy you? And anyone can speak up. Did anyone find the, I'm getting there. I found it. It's just Zoom makes everything a little slower. And it's funny because when I talk about slower, that's kind of relative. If Hans and Sophie Scholl had this at their fingertips, it would be a totally different game. Anybody find any one of the characters to be unethical or dangerous or not serious or anything like that? Don't all speak at once.
The judge was pretty unethical.
Oh, yes.
Roland, I forget his last name, starts with an F. Yeah, he just did whatever he wanted. It seems like he already made up his mind before he heard anything.
Oh yeah, they were, the minute they were in the courtroom, the decision was made. It was done. They were gonna die. I don't know if you recognize that, but that was
Yeah.
Nazi Germany. It was not democracy at all. So yes, and that,
Roland,
go ahead.
Yeah. Roland Friesler.
Yes.
I don't know if that's the same. But yeah, they even in the book they said that their attorney, their defendant attorney, their defense was just more of a courtesy.
Right.
He was just there to say that they had an attorney.
Right. Have any of you ever read the To Kill a Mockingbird?
Yeah.
A while ago.
Well, in the book, Tom Robinson is accused of rape. He clearly doesn't do it. Scout's father is the lawyer. And he knows he's going to lose that court case, that first court case. He knows it. Because at that time in history, in the 1930s, in the South, if a black man was accused of rape, it didn't matter whether he did it or not, right? The difference is that Scout's father, Atticus, actually tried to get him off, right? And he knew that it was going to go to an appeal. But Tom Robinson ended up ending his own life because he just thought this is a done deal, right? Well, this is the same sort of time period. Similar time period. That was the 1930s. This was the early 1940s. And so there's a similarity, a sad similarity. It wasn't just everybody not receiving justice, but there were not everybody in the United States who were citizens received justice. And Scout's father actually defended him, but not all lawyers would have, right? And so I think we need to see some of the parallels about privilege, right? And that if you got with the program and decided that you were going to be part of the Hitler Youth, then you were given this privilege. Whereas the White Rose said, screw that privilege. This is just completely wrong. And every single one of those people could have taken that privilege and ran with it. But instead, they put together a resistance group, which is pretty remarkable. And that's why I think their story is so important. Okay, so let's take a look at this little video that it took me a long time to find because of Zoom and everything else called, not that. Let's watch the video.
Okay, what should I put here? Suppose I could just say hello. Actually, I should probably make that hello from Lev. Okay. Dear Mimi. Actually, that might be a little bit too formal to say dear because I don't really know her, so maybe just hi, Mimi. But there's something about hi that sounds uptight, so maybe I should make it hey, Mimi. Yeah, that's it. Hey, Mimi. Okay, now here I should definitely remind her who I am. But wait, that sounds like I'm expecting her to forget me, so I should change that to, nah, that's too polite. Make that, yeah. Okay, here I can be nice. Say I hope she had a good night. Then I should tell her that I had a fantastic night, so she'll start to think she would have had more fun if she was with me instead of the party that she went to. And then I'll throw in some little indication that somebody was hitting on me so that maybe she'll get kind of jealous. Now how should I do this? How should I do this? No, that's too forward. That's too traditional. No. Well, wait a second. Would you like to is a yes or no question, so maybe I should try. There's something about that that sounds a little bit too needy, so maybe I should try this. Okay, that's straightforward enough. Send it.
Now, I recognize that this was a short little video, but it was really a useful video because the idea of deciding what to include on, this was what, a really short little, try to move this, a short little email, right? From a guy who met this girl that he wants to go out with. And he was having this subtext decision in his head for decisions about what kind of information he was going to put out there to his audience of one person, okay? So in your writing, you're going to be looking at two different audiences, okay, and two different groups who are putting out information. First, you're going to be looking at the Nazis and the information they put out there in order to get the Germans to follow their government. And they're, at this point, winning because they have taken control. And then you have this resistance group who says, hey, they're taking away our rights. Hey, they're killing a whole group of people or taking the rights away from a whole group of people or more. Hey, this is wrong. Hey, let's change this. And they had to sit and figure out how they were going to get the information out there with the facts that would refute the fallacies. They had to think about what was on that page, and every word mattered. Every choice they made mattered. So in getting back to your writing prompt here, your job is going to look at these assumptions and fallacies that the White Rose members had to contend with. You're going to argue how effective or ineffective they were, okay? And the reason why you're doing that is because if people want to make social change in their society with the groups of people that they inspire, how are they going to go about doing that? Okay? So this is a really important prompt that goes beyond the scope of the White Rose. It goes beyond the scope of Nazi Germany. And it hits you in a place of, this is important because you need to be thinking about your contribution as citizens or people living in this country and how you are going to participate and make change or not. Okay? So my dog's going to go crazy in 1 minute. I have to grab her, sorry. Mail carrier is here, and that's her, that's her resistance. She resists against him every day. Anyway, do you guys have any questions about the writing prompt or about the White Rose?
This is a little bit random, but I've looked into next week's assignments, and I noticed that we're not doing like the same like intense pre-writing or anything. Is there a reason for that?
Let me look. Let me see if it was my mistake or if it, I have to check and see.
Okay, because I noticed we have like a draft due by next Wednesday.
Yeah.
And there was like some other thing, but I didn't see anything about a pre-writing.
I think what I am doing with this paper, but I have to double check, is that I am having you choose a couple of pre-writing prompts. She sees them, and so she's doing her thing. Okay. What I normally do with this essay is that the first time you do all the intense pre-writing, and in the second one you're doing a draft with a couple of pre-writing choices. Okay, so let's see. Yes, so that, yeah, I'm correct. Okay, so you are doing essay number 2, pre-writing at least one strategy used in one and the first draft. So Lala, you can do as many of the pre-writing strategies as you want. I think that the pre-writing strategies are actually super useful, but for this particular essay, I'm giving you a choice. So my rationale is that I made you try them all, and you can look at this particular essay and then make a choice about what you want to do. And that's not a random question at all. Actually, very much connects with what we're doing. So, any other questions or thoughts that you would like to share?
Do we have a midterm, and do we have a midterm actually?
No, you don't have a midterm.
Okay.
Nope. You know why you don't have a midterm?
Because we write essays.
That's correct. But I will tell you, Reese, the next project that you're going to do, you're not writing an essay. You're creating, you know how the Sophie Scholl and the White Rose, they created leaflets? You're going to be creating a video. And you're going to do a little bit of reflection on it, but it's not going to be anywhere near writing an essay. So I'm very excited. My other 2 classes that are very similar to these 2 online classes, they're putting their videos together. In fact, they're due tonight. So I'm very excited to see what they came up with too. They're my face-to-face classes. So yeah. Anyway, any other questions?
When you're talking about how we need at least 4 sources, the ones that we have on the Nazi propaganda Google Doc, that would be considered a source off the internet, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then also, is a visual included in one of those 4?
Yes. Yep. So Sophie Scholl and the White Rose, at least a piece of propaganda and a visual, right? And then you need a library source of some sort, okay? Because I want you to practice looking things up in the library. Now, what you choose to look up in the library is up to you, okay? So you can choose to look up propaganda in the library and choose not to use one of those propagandistic sources that I gave you. You can find something else about Sophie Scholl and the White Rose. I bet there's papers that are written about Sophie Scholl and the White Rose in the libraries. It's my guess. I can't guarantee, but it's my guess. You can look up resistance tactics at the library. So there's a lot of different ideas that you can do. And then if you choose to, you can use forms of resistance. You don't have to, but you can choose to. Okay? So when I say at least 4, you could choose to use more sources if you want to. But yes, your visual has to be cited. And you have to have the visual. You have to use Sophie Scholl. You have to use a piece of propaganda, one that I found or one that you find, and then a library source about something. Did I send you? I don't know if I have. Because I need to send that to you. I'm going to ask you. Did I give you an extra credit field trip opportunity yet?
Nope.
No.
Okay, as soon as we get off, I am going to send you guys within like 10 minutes an extra credit field trip opportunity that you can use, that you can turn in up through week 15. And it's visiting either the Museum of Tolerance or you can go to both if you want, or the Holocaust Museum. And you can earn some extra credit for doing that. And you could decide if you wanted to do it this weekend if you felt like it. Although just to let you know, the Museum of Tolerance is closed on Saturdays, but they are open on Sundays. And they have the Anne Frank exhibit, although that's a little bit of an extra cost. So I'm going to send that to you guys ASAP as well, along with anything else. Any other questions? All right. If there's nothing else,